So nutrition medicine is the new up and coming, or nutrition psychiatry is the new up and coming field. So I congratulate all of you for being here and being interested in this topic. And I hope that after today that you continue to explore this topic. I obviously feel very passionately about this. This study was done, or this paper was written in 2015. And they stated that diet is as important to psychiatry as it is to cardiology, endocrinology, and gastroenterology. And evidence is steadily growing for the relationship between dietary quality and potential nutritional deficiencies. So it's not just what people are eating, but also what they're not eating, and mental health. And for the select use of nutrient-based supplements to address deficiencies or as monotherapies or augmentation therapies. I want to tell you all a story about an experience I had working at a local alcohol and drug rehab facility. It's an inpatient facility, and it caters to impaired professionals. So a high level of doctors, lawyers, celebrities, pilots, because we had a contract with Delta. And then we had a young adult program, which I worked in, which were the 16 to 26-year-olds. I think we went as young as 16. It might have been 18 to 26. And they lived off campus, and they in apartments, and then they came to campus for therapy, for treatment. And it was the old-fashioned model of 60 to 90 days, which was absolutely wonderful. And so when I was there 13 years ago, and I was just coming off my boating accident and looking for some part-time work. And there was a woman who was going out on maternity leave, so they hired me to come in and do her job for the 6 months that she was out on leave. But while I was there, I started noticing that we weren't really talking about nutrition. And of course, I was still in the middle of my program, but I had already started putting the pieces together that, especially in dealing with substance abuse, we really needed to be doing nutrition. So after my 6-month stint was up, the organization asked me to stay and put together a 6-week rotation training for the patients. And so I did that. And it was all about nutrition. So 1 week it was on nutrition in the brain. It was on how to, cook healthy meals. It was a whole 6-week series. And so because people were there for, up to not 3 months, they at least got to see it one time. Sometimes they got to see it twice. And in exchange for me doing this training, which I didn't get paid for, I was given an office, and I was told that I would get referrals and I would treat people from the program for nutrition. So I thought, well, this is awesome. I get to start my private practice here. There were a couple other therapists who were doing the same kind of work. There was a woman who was a dietitian who was there, and they had another guy who was doing sex therapy. So they both had, they had thriving practices because they were getting fed these patients through the inpatient program. So I thought it was going to be great. And at first it was. At first I was getting a ton of referrals, and I was meeting with people. We were working on their diets, and it was exciting. And then all of a sudden I noticed that the referrals started to trickle, and then they were non-existent. So, and this program is not close to my house. So it was quite a distance for me to drive. So I would go and I would do the hour-long talk, and then I would sit and have nobody to talk to, no clients. So I went to the medical director and I said, can I do a presentation to the doctors here so they have an idea of who I'm looking for, who needs to be referred to me? And he said, that's a great idea. So I did that. I created this beautiful lunch. I cooked everything from scratch. And I took great care with that, and did this little hour-long lunch and learn in service for the doctors. And at the end of the training, one of the doctors raised his hand, and he happened to have been the youngest doctor in the room. So he was the closest to medical school. And he said, I understand what you're saying, but I'm still not really clear who I should refer to you. And I said to him, I think every single person who walks in the door here should meet with me at least once. And he said, oh, okay. Well, when the room cleared out, the medical director stayed back, and he was Indian. And he came up to me and he said, look, he said, my mom was a naturopath in India, And she did exactly what you're talking about. He said, you are spot on with wanting us to do what you're asking us to do. Unfortunately, you're about 5 years ahead of the curve. So this was 13 years ago. So then this research, this paper came out in 2015. And funny, about 5 years ago, one of the therapists that I worked with, so I left shortly after that, but one of the therapists that I worked with there became the CEO for a short period of time. And she called me and she said, hey, I just became CEO. We're looking at revamping the program. Would you be interested in coming back and doing some more talks on nutrition? So I said, yeah, that would be awesome. I'd love that. It didn't work out, but I loved that they were looking at that. I loved that they were finally thinking about it, because it is a key part of the whole puzzle when we're working with our clients. So this is another paper. This just came out last year, 2022, talking about nutrition psychiatry is the future of mental health. And this talks about the fact that even in the APA, they are now talking about nutrition in their complementary and integrative textbook. So it's still not part of mainstream. It's still considered complementary and integrative. So first comes medication, then comes the other stuff. I hope that we get to a place where it's not just medication, but that the other stuff rises to the top and we say, at least concurrently, we're going to do both of these things. This is another paper that came out, when was this? I forget, this is current, 2019, saying that data suggests that what we eat matters, but the current research doesn't explain how. And we all know that research usually lags behind clinical practice, usually by about 17 years. So I'm not waiting around for when we know exactly what the mechanisms are of how what I eat exactly impacts whether I have Alzheimer's or ADHD or something else. But we do know, they're saying that, in this paper, that we do think that there is, that we need more research, and that there is the possibility that we should have some policies on diet and nutrition when it comes to mental health. This is dietary recommendations for the prevention of depression. And they go on to say that, there is existing evidence that says there are healthy diet practices that can reduce the risk of developing depression. It's imperative to remain mindful of any protective effects that are likely to come from the cumulative and synergic effect of nutrients that comprise the whole diet, rather than from the effects of individual nutrients or single foods. As the body of evidence grows, from controlled intervention studies on dietary patterns and depression, these recommendations should be modified accordingly. And I really do want to emphasize this, that it is, we do want to be careful about not singling out any one particular nutrient and saying, oh, this is what we need to do. Like, oh, we must take vitamin D and that's it. Well, we do need to take vitamin D, but we also need to take calcium and we need to take magnesium, because they all work together. And yes, we need to take B5 because we have adrenal dysregulation from all of the stress we have, but B5, it works with the adrenals really well, but we also need B6 to help with our serotonin pathway, and we need B1 for other things and so on. So we really want to understand that the body works in a holistic way, and that we can't just tease out one particular nutrient and say, this is the answer. These are dietary recommendations from that same paper, which was from 2017, by the way. In the dietary prevention recommendations for prevention of depression, following traditional dietary patterns like the Mediterranean diet, Norwegian or Japanese diet. These are all very similar. And then the American version of that would probably be the DASH diet, which was developed to help with cardiac health. It's typically a pretty whole foods based diet for the most part. They do allow a little bit of processed food and low sodium. An increased consumption of fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grain cereals, nuts, and seeds, which is the Mediterranean, Norwegian, or Japanese diets. Include a high consumption of foods that are rich in omega-3s, which we'll talk about. Replace unhealthy foods with wholesome and nutritious foods, and limit your intake of processed foods, fast foods, commercial bakery goods, and sweets. So this was a meta-analysis. It was extracted from a lot of different data. And actually, you'll see at the bottom of the page, the resource is Dr. Sanchez Villegas. This person, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, has done a ton of research on depression and the Mediterranean diet. In fact, I don't think I have any, I'm not showing the slides in this presentation, but I have some of Dr. Villegas' work elsewhere. But the spoiler alert is these guidelines are good for all diagnoses. And I would say these guidelines are good for all of us, regardless of whether you are neurotypical or neurodivergent. It does not matter. We all should be eating this more whole food style diet.